pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep you over. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. Y'all notice in that scripture, it doesn't say if, right? It says when you pass through the water, when you go through the fire, right? Because it's not a matter of if it's going to happen. It's a matter of when it happens. And what God is referring to is like life's difficulties, the trials, the troubles, the tribulations, the testing that you're going to have to endure on this walk with him, right? It's going to feel like you might be drowning. It's going to feel like you might be burning, but you're not, because he's with you the whole entire time, right? And recently, y'all, I had a dream, okay? But before I get to that dream, the Lord reminded me of a dream that I had before I even came out here to Washington. I think it was before God even told me to come out here, but he was letting me know what was going to happen in advance, okay? So in the dream, my husband was driving, I was in the passenger seat, and my daughter was in the back seat, and we were on this cliff, like we were driving on this cliff, and at the end of the cliff, y'all, was this huge like fire, like it was massive, right? And in the dream, like I was freaking out, and I said the Lord's Prayer and everything, and like the dream ended, right? And at the time, I wasn't as spiritually like mature, especially when it came to dreams, to understand what God was trying to tell me. So I took it as like destruction, right? Like I looked at my husband like, you're leading us to destruction. Like it was hot. But later, God had revealed to me that he was letting me know that we were going to be going through the refinements fire, okay? And it made sense at the end of the day too, because my daughter was in the car with us. Like out of us three, like she's the most innocent one. Like why would she be headed into destruction, right? And everything ended up lining up like that too, because later on at some point the Lord called me out here to Washington, told me to quit my jobs, go into ministry, right? And like that's when the refinement really began. Isaiah 48:10, see, I have refined you, though not as silver, I have tested you in the furnace of affliction. Now, just speaking from like a marriage journey POV, I talked about this briefly in videos before, how God had basically turned my husband into a pharaoh, right? And, you know, he had hardened his heart towards me, and it wasn't for punishment purposes. It led me more into my purpose. Like I clung more to God in that time, right? I was still making videos on TikToks. I started doing one-on-ones. You know, I started to draw closer to the Lord, especially because of everything that was going on. At the time, though, I thought it was Satan, like having a field day with us. Not to say that he didn't have some play in that, but God had revealed to me later that he had hardened my husband's heart towards me to draw me closer to purpose. And also because there were attachments between me and my husband that God was trying to sever. Ungodly attachments, like worldly attachments. And then of course, sometime after that, he had softened my husband's heart, and you know, we came back into restoration, communication, so on and so forth or whatnot. But that was just part of that refinement, right? My husband was going through his own thing too, you know, but God hardened his heart towards me was part of my refinement as well. So now the dream that I had recently, okay, in this dream I was driving, and there was a man. I thought it was my dad. It still could have been my dad, but nonetheless, there was a man in the passenger seat with me, and he was asleep. Okay, in the back was my son and a baby. I don't know in the dream if it was my baby or not. I don't know, but nonetheless, I know my son and a baby was in the back seat, and a man who I presumed in the dream was my dad was in the passenger seat. Okay, so I'm driving, and I ended up going over this bridge into water. Okay, now, in the dream, like I did not panic at all. Not like the dream that I had where my husband was driving and we were going into the fire. I started freaking out, right? In this dream, I did not panic in the least bit, okay? My son freaked out, but I told him, I said, don't worry about it. Be calm. We're going to get up out of here, okay? So I grabbed him and the baby and we got out. And y'all, what is so crazy about this, okay? We got out of the car, right? There was no issues at all. Like water did not even come into the car, okay? Like it was a smooth, easy process, all right? I didn't panic, nothing, all right? We just got up out of there. And when we got to family, right? My son and the baby were gone. Like they disappeared, you know? And there was a little girl in front of me. And in my dream, I remember thinking like, I don't know who this little girl is, but out loud, I was like, oh, this is my daughter that has not yet been revealed. So it's like birthing a new promise, right? Which is what God takes you through. You know, there's a bunch of character development, y'all. There's a lot of pruning that has to happen. I talk about this a lot. There has to be more of him and less of you. You know what I'm saying? Throughout this whole entire process. So the little girl represented basically the promise, right? After going through everything that God has me going through to prepare me, that child it represented the promise that is going to be birthed. Something else God revealed to me, right? And I was just like, oh my gosh. So just like I told you guys, the man in my passenger seat of the car, right? I believe was supposed to be my dad in the dream, but God has shown up as my dad in dreams before, okay? And he will do that. And what God reminded me of was in the Bible when the disciples were on the boat and there was like the storm and the waves were going on and Jesus was asleep in the boat and they like woke him up because they were freaking out, you know? And that was God in my dream representing my dad who was asleep, and we just went over the bridge into the water. You know what I'm saying? So God is always with you. And notice, like I said, y'all, the difference between the two dreams. In the fire dream, I was freaking out, right? But now that I've been on this journey for a while, God has done, you know, a lot of character development in me. He's still not done. You know, there's a lot that he has, you know, grown in me, taught me, and so on and so forth. So in that dream, when we went over into the water, I didn't freak out at all. God was with me. Psalm 66 verse 12, you let men ride over our heads. We went through fire and water, but you brought us into a place of abundance. And that's what God is doing, y'all. Like these things that you're going through, right? These trials, troubles, tribulations, the suffering, the affliction, you know, all of it is a refinement, right? You're going to go through the fire, but you will not be burned. You're going to go through the difficulties, the waters of difficulties or what have you, but you will not drown because God is with you the whole entire time. And when you are done, right, when he says you are done, when he determines that you have been refined the way that he wants you to be refined, you are going to birth the promise that God has for you.